Hello, I'm Conquering History. This is going to be the first of hopefully many Kaiserreich lore videos to come. As such, it is not necessarily a completely finished product. As you watch this video, I would really appreciate if you think of constructive criticisms and feedback to give me at the end of the video and comment when you are done. It is only with your feedback that I can improve this channel and make it better. I hope you enjoy The Rise of the Combined Syndicates of America and John Reed. The history of the rise of syndicalism in the United States of America has origins that can be traced back for decades, particularly in America's industrial heartland. However, the creation of the Combined Syndicates of America would be most accurately be said to have begun with the founding of the organization known as the Industrial Workers of the World in the year 1905 on June 24th. It was in that year that hundreds of union representatives met in Chicago with the goal of forming an international labor union that prescribed to a philosophy of revolutionary industrial unionism. One of the IWW's chief complaints was with the American Federation of Labor, who they saw as being too conservative. Eugene Debs, William Troutman, Mary Harris Mother Jones, as well as Marxists, anarchists, and of course unionists would comprise their founders. These men and women drafted a constitution for their new organization, stating their beliefs clearly.
The working class and the employing class have nothing in common. There can be no peace as long as hunger and want are found among millions of the working people, and the few who make up the employing class have all the good things in life. It is the historic mission of the working class to do away with capitalism. The army of the production must be organized, not only for everyday struggle with capitalists, but also to carry on production when capitalism shall have been overthrown. By organizing industrially, we are forming the structure of the new society within the shell of the old.
The IWW also had an organizational aim of organizing its members by industry, as well as reaching across the lines of industrial and international separation to achieve their goals. Their goal was worker solidarity towards overthrowing the employing class for its crimes against workers, with their rallying cry being that an injury to one is an injury to all. Perhaps the most radical of IWW's policies was the inclusion of workers into their organizations, whether they were women, black, or even foreign immigrants. By August of 1917, the IWW would be comprised of over 150,000 members nationwide. It was also in this year that events on the other side of the globe would have profound ramifications for the IWW, the United States, and the entire world. The first was on January 8, 1917, when the German Kaiser Wilhelm II refused to follow the advice of his military cabinet and reinstitute unrestricted submarine warfare. Because United States ships continued to be safe from harm from German U-boat attacks, the United States was never given causa belli to intervene in the war. 2 months later, in March of 1917, the Russian Tsar Nicholas abdicated and Russia began to collapse into anarchy. The Russian Civil War would be documented by an American journalist who would change the face of socialism in the United States forever. John Reed. John Silas Reed was born in Portland, Oregon on October 22, 1887. He was a sickly child when he was young, and recurring illness would plague him for the rest of his life, including the need for a kidney removal in 1916. Following an education at the local Portland Academy, John Reed, Jack to his friends, entered Harvard College in fall of 1906. Once there, he became involved in numerous student activities ranging from the swimming team to the drama club. Most important to his future career, he served on the editorial boards of the Harvard Monthly and Lampoon. He also attended meetings of the Socialist Club because their president was his friend Walter Lippmann. However, he never joined the club formally. Despite this, the meetings had a profound effect on Reed. When Reed graduated from Harvard in 1910, though he had ambitions to be a journalist, he wanted to experience the international world. He traveled to Europe working on a cattle boat and visited Spain, England, and France, while working as a common laborer to support himself for half a year. Upon his return to the United States, Jack Reed became known as a proficient journalist, with short stories, essays, and poems becoming published in several magazines and newspapers of note, such as the Saturday Evening Post. However, Reed's sympathy for the working class would grow as well during these years as he reported on their struggles across the country. He would be arrested for the first time in 1913 in New Jersey for speaking on behalf of local silk mill strikers. It was here that Jack would be introduced to, and first become an ally of, the industrial workers of the world. Later that year, Reed was assigned out of the country and was sent to Mexico, which was in the throes of its revolution. He spent 4 months traveling with the army of Pancho Villa, the most colorful of the Mexican Revolution's characters. Reed was hostile to the idea of American intervention into the revolution and mourned the plight of Mexico's lower classes. His articles from this time period were eventually published in the book Insurgent Mexico. Following these events, Reed next returned to the United States to report on an incident in Colorado. Over 1,200 coal miners alongside their families had been striking in an attempt to force the Rocky Mountain Fuel Company to give in to their demands, which included the implementation of an 8-hour workday, recognitions of unions as bargaining agents, and enforcement of mine safety laws. John D. Rockefeller Jr., only son of the founder of Standard Oil, owned this mining company. The Colorado National Guard was sent in practically under the direct command of the owners and broke up the tent city that had been created by them and their families. 19 people were killed in the ensuing gunfight and fire that broke out, not just miners, but the women and the children too. The leader of the strike, Luis Ticas, was killed, and his body left out by a local railroad track for 3 days in open view. This event became known as the Ludlow Massacre. In response, Colorado's organized unions began an armed uprising, attacking mines and their guards for 10 days, resulting in further death until federal troops quelled the revolt. Reed's investigation of these events would be published into another book, The Colorado War, and would further cement his political views on the plight of the working man and the struggle that was to come. When the First Weltkrieg broke out in Europe, Metropolitan magazine sent Reed to Italy to report. Upon arriving, he was disgusted by both the war itself and all its participants, seeing it as anathema to solidarity amongst the international working class. All sense of workers of the world uniting had been replaced by rampant jingoism, militarism, and nationalism. In response to this, he anonymously wrote a piece called The Traitors' War, attempting to remind European socialists of their true goals. He said they must not be duped by tyranny into going forth in an alleged holy war for the cause of liberalism. It was not the war of socialist working class. Reed would publish many more stories during the war years and also got married to Louise Bryant during this time. However, as the United States seemed to be approaching the point of needing to intervene, Reed's radical views resulted in him being unable to find work in traditional magazines, though he would write over 50 articles on economic and social issues for The Masses, a socialist newspaper that the United States Postal Service refused to deliver. When the Russian government collapsed in 1917 following the abdication of Tsar Nicholas, Jack Reed and his wife Louise determined to travel to Russia and observe the revolution that had been ignited. While in Russia, Reed personally met many prominent Bolshevik leaders, including Vladimir Lenin prior to his assassination, as well as Leon Trotsky before his deportation. Though the Russian Civil War would eventually end in defeat for the Bolsheviks, their valiant fight further galvanized Jack Reed towards fighting for the rights of workers everywhere. When he returned to the United States in 1921, he took note of what he had seen in Europe. The Commune of France had been established as the world's first syndicalist state, but suffered from internal divisions between anarchists, Jacobins, and others. The political left in America had also been split between the IWW and the American Socialist Party, as well as various other leftist factions, for almost a decade. At an emergency national congress of the Socialist Party, he called for all trade unions in the Socialist Party to unite together to become stronger as a single coalition. The industrial workers of the world agreed to this and would become the centerpiece around the newly formed Big Union. Comprised of communists, socialists, and most of all syndicalists, the new IWW began to mobilize the workers of America's industrial heartland in the Rust Belt. Following this reconciliation of the left, the unions enjoyed some successes in various strikes for workers' rights throughout the first half of the 1920s. However, the powers of conservative Washington and Wall Street did not worry, with the Roaring Twenties bringing them unprecedented prosperity, as well as being untouched by the horrors of the Weltkrieg. But in 1925, the British Revolution erupted. The British government collapsed, the royal family was forced to flee the country, and the United Kingdom defaulted on its U.S. loans, sending the American economy into the Great Depression. Following this, Reed and the IWW called a special Union Congress, in which the IWW and the other union organizations were rechristened the Combined Syndicates of America. As the country suffered through the Great Depression, the Socialist Party of America, with help from the CSA, began to capture several Midwestern states during election years, with Jack Reed himself becoming a New York senator in 1928. However, though the forces of labor are seeing better results from their efforts, the work programs of Republican presidents in the late 20s and early 30s do not solve systemic labor problems, generating interest in the election of a more socialist administration to bring about direct action to reform the system from the top down. In the 1932 election, Socialists and Democrats continued to grow more popular. However, there was no electoral majority reached by any candidate, resulting in the House of Representatives re-electing President Hoover to another term to the anger of many. As the 1936 U.S. presidential election approaches, the United States are more divided than ever. The Republicans are the party of the status quo, represented by Charles Curtis, the current vice president. The Democrats have nominated Texan John Garner, who only promises harsh treatment of any extreme parties. Huey Long, the senator and virtual dictator of Louisiana, is running under the banner of the newly formed American Union Party. He claims to be a friend of the farmer just as the CSA is friend of the workers, but he has surrounded himself with radical right-wing personalities such as the fiery priest Father Colin. The Socialist Party is running the current head of the CSA, Alexander Berkman. However, due to his poor health, Jack Reed's name has been in the conversation as a replacement. And above all this, there are rumors of the military attempting to seize power from the government and bringing an end to free and open elections. Whatever the outcome of the 1936 election, the proletariat have nothing to lose but their chains.